Starting in 5 seconds. When the Speakers' Conference was held in 1968 in the present Assembly building, I had felt then that it was a small building, but you had carried on with it for these 12 years. We do have to observe economy, but an assembly building is an essential expenditure. Therefore, I am glad that you have thought of constructing a new building. It is like a temple. It is a temple for democracy, temple for the people of whichever faith or political color. It is where all shades of opinion meet and decide as to what should be the fate of the people. Democracy has different colors. We do know some of them, but we are following the parliamentary type of democracy which is growing strong in the Commonwealth countries. Having been a part of the Commonwealth, naturally we chose the parliamentary type, but as a member of the Constituent Assembly, I knew how our experts tried to put into our constitution different shades of opinion, presidential type and parliamentary type. Even in the parliamentary type, there are different systems. From the very beginning, since independence, I have had a doubt in my mind whether this system does not need a little change. I have a suspicion that a minority of the people have a chance to roll over the majority of the people, and a multi party system in a constituency where 20 to 30 people contest. Nowadays, a person getting about 10% votes also gets elected, and he becomes the representative of 100% of the people. If people are elected like that with a small minority of votes and a party getting a narrow majority of one or two votes elects a leader who himself represents a minority, that leader becomes the chief minister or the prime minister. But in Australia, when I went there in 1968, I studied their practice. They have tried to circumvent this lacuna by making voting compulsory. Every voter must vote. If he does not, he has to produce a medical certificate that he is seriously ill, or else he is taken to a task, a fine, or something. I can understand this happening in Australia with a small population of 1.2 or 1.3 crore, because the population does not grow there. It is a huge country with a small population only. Sir, at the secondary stage, students are called upon to study along with the mother tongue, a language which will be Hindi in non Hindi speaking states, and it should be one of the other languages in the Hindi speaking states, preferably a South Indian language, and also English, which is the third language. Tamil Nadu has come for an adverse comment in this matter. I would like to know whether any other state is honestly implementing this policy of three language system. You find that education is mostly being imparted in the mother tongue, and some place is given to English. So in actual practice it is being taught very indifferently. If you look into the matter, you will find that English is not being taught with proper standards. So there are three languages. Formula is a thing which everybody talks about and which nobody agrees to implement. For instance, there were questions earlier also as to what the Uttar Pradesh is doing, whether they are teaching any other Indian language, preferably South Indian language. The reply came that they are not doing anything of the sort. It is true that Tamil Nadu declared that it would only follow the two language formula. The new chief minister also said that while that is so, other states are not saying anything on this matter and they are just keeping quiet. This is how it is actually being implemented in practice. Actually, what is being done is that the mother tongue is given full recognition and then comes English. So, in actual practice, de facto mother tongue is the first language that is being taught, and then English is the second language, not Hindi or any other Indian language is the second language, though you talk much about it. This is the thing which has to be taken into account. But if you are going to follow the three language formula, please see whether it is being carried out anywhere by any state and then try to evolve a realistic policy. I do not find fault with UP or Bihar government because they do not teach one of the South Indian language to their children. Why should they burden their boys and girls with a South Indian language with which they very rarely came into contact? There is no motivation. You may say there is motivation in non Hindi speaking states to learn Hindi as Hindi has been adopted as our national language and link language, etc. But there is resistance to Hindi while framing the policy regarding that. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. Mr. Speaker, sir, I take this opportunity to thank all the honorable members who have taken part in this debate on the outcome of my visit to the United States. I thank Honorable Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee in particular for having done me the honor by participating in the debate. The level of the debate does credit to our house, and I am very grateful that I have this opportunity to clarify some of the issues arising out of a statement that I made before this august house. Sir, after I presented the budget of 1991, this visit to the United States was in some way the most challenging task that I faced, but I was sustained by the powerful legacy of our freedom struggle of Pandit Nehru, who made India the knowledge power that we are today, Srimati Indira Gandhi, who made us the nuclear power that we are today, and Sri Rajiv Gandhi, who made us the IT power that we are today. India stands tall today in the Committee of Nations. We are a country today with the second highest rate of growth in the world. The world marvels and respects us for being a democracy. Please ask this question and marvel how a country of a billion persons with such great diversities and with such great complexities, with all the religions of the world represented in its population, yet manages to flourish as a functioning democracy. People also marvel that we have probably the second or the third largest Muslim population among our citizens, and not one of them has been found to be joined the rank of Al Qaeda and such other groups. The world respects India for what we are. Therefore, it was for me a great privilege to represent India in talking to the various dignitaries right from President Bush downwards, and in my address of the joint session to the US Congress. Issues have been raised about the basic orientation of our foreign policy, the foreign policy of our country ever since we became an independent nation has been designed to promote our enlightened national interest. That orientation has not changed. There is, of course, a strong civilizational influence which also guides our attitude to the world as we see it today, or the world that we would like to shape. That is, as it should be. We live in a dynamic world, in a fast changing world. I can assure you, in my visit, I was cautious of this great responsibility as the Prime Minister of this great country, that I should not do or say anything which anyway reflects adversely on ourselves. Two types of comments have been made on what we have done in this visit. There is one set of comments from our left colleagues whose comments I greatly value, and I respect that we are continuing the same policies as of the previous government of getting closer and closer to the United States, and that we are in danger of being submerged in that orbit under the influence of the United States. There is, however, another stream coming from the benches opposite, that somehow we have compromised India's strategic nuclear autonomy. So, I will deal with both these issues in some details. The United States is a superpower today. We want to move towards a multipolar world. But how do you become part of a multipolar world? I would like that a strong India should grow fast enough to become a powerful pole of the evolving global economy. So it is no use merely saying that we want to get away from this multipolar world. The practical strategies have to lay emphasis on building the economic strength and cohesion of our country. If India grows in the next
10 years at the rate of 8 to 10% per annum, then we will probably come the third or the fourth largest economy in the world, and the world will respect us. Therefore, while we know where we want to go, our objective is a multipolar world. Our objective is to work together with other like minded countries to manage and promote equitable management of the global interdependence of nations, which cannot be avoided in this one world that we are living in today. That is not something world is going to happen overnight. Step by step, we have to move in that direction, and relations with the United States are of great importance in achieving that objective. Of course, in doing so, we must not compromise on our national honor, on our national interest. But engagement with the United States is essential in the world that we live in. This is not an alliance, this is not a military alliance, this is not an alliance against any other country. Since our government came into office, we have entered into strategic partnership with Russia. We have very close relations with Russia. Recently, our chairperson visited Russia. She was received with utmost warmth by President Putin. Stop.
Starting in 5 seconds. Sir, experience has shown that housing units raised by the official agencies for the poor are too expensive, and the intended benefit does not reach the beneficiaries for whom the schemes are launched. Now, the housing policy acknowledges the imperative of bringing the prospective beneficiaries to the center of development process, and it emphasizes on involving the people in the housing and development programs. This is a welcome change, a welcome shift in the strategy to combat the problem. Man has always had the instinct to build a shelter for himself. Nothing else explains the mushroom growth of slums. However, a slum dweller, being in constant fear of being evicted from the land which he has encroached upon, does not really spend much on building a shanty for himself, even by his own standards. If he were to be assured of the security of tenure over that particular piece of land, and if that were not possible, if he were to be offered an alternative developed piece of land and provided with the basic services like water and sewage system, street lighting, and other important amenities, and also offered some small loan on soft terms, I am sure that every household will be able to build for itself a house which would conform to the basic minimum housing norms postulated by the housing policy. Sir, Gram Panchayats, municipal committees, and the non governmental organizations could also be associated in this national endeavor. particularly in the process of disbursement and repayment of loans, and also for encouraging the cooperative societies, thus relieving the government of some burdensome task. Sir, already there is a scheme for providing housing sites and construction assistance under the Minimum Needs Program, and also the World Bank funded sites and services scheme. And if such schemes are expanded and strengthened, the housing activity, particularly for the poor, will receive a big impetus. Instead of engaging itself in the house building business, the government should initiate a massive program of providing small developed piece of land to different categories of people. The National Commission on Urbanization has also in its report observed that it is lack of building plots which is the root cause of the problem. So today you know that the price of land accelerating at an unimaginable rate. Big business people, big land developers, and property dealers enter the business of real estate. Sir, a mention has been made, if not here, perhaps outside, that the present budget has not respected the long term fiscal policy. I think the long term fiscal policy says that in exceptional circumstances it could be modified. There could be no exception circumstance more than the calamity that we ran into last year, and to the extent that drought related cess was introduced and now it has been extended, it does not amount really to impairing the basic intention and character of the long term fiscal policy. So, from that point of view, if the major part of the fiscal policy has been left untouched, particularly the marginal rate of taxation, particularly the kind of tax shelter that they have provided, I think we should compliment the government for having carried out their promise with a kind of credibility which one expected from a responsible government like the one we have. I think tax centers provisions are there. My friend talked about that. I would like to submit one simple suggestion that within the overall target of rupees 40,000 under section 80C, if the ratios are changed, that is, we have at the moment up to rupees 6,000 100% relief, more than 50%, and then 40% relief, then 50%, and then 40% relief to review it. Nobody loses. The money is retained within the system. The only thing is that the exemption limit about which my friend talked helps the big saver mainly, but so far as the small saver is concerned, he is likely to benefit if Section 80C provisions are reviewed for the benefit of people who save in the first round with a larger amount entitling 100% concessions rather than tapering off after rupees 6,000. Perhaps there is a need for a little gesture that will bring benefit to a large number of middle class people. The principle of net savings has been carried further, particularly through the National Savings Scheme, where 100% deduction is allowed up to rupees 30,000 and the rate of interest has been raised to 12%. To that extent, we are carrying the economic management on a healthier path. Sir, I am not an expert on defense, but on aspects related to industry and dispensation fixed and promoted by the presence of a very distinguished member of the government from the Ministry of Defense sitting here. I would like to make two or three observations. In defense, we cannot afford to blunt the teeth of the armed forces in the country in the interest of security and other related matters. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. Sir, regarding the prices of articles which are in daily use, the people are put to lot of inconvenience and nuisance. I would therefore request the government to introduce effective control over all these articles of consumption and other daily necessities of life which are required by the poor people in the villages. Even the cost of medicines is going up every day, and there is no likelihood of its being brought down. Those engaged in the trade say that because of the foreign exchange difficulty, they are not able to get the medicines in sufficient quantities at competitive price. After all, medicines are indispensable even to the poorest of the poor. So the government must see that sufficient foreign exchange is made available for this purpose. I want the state governments to address the government of India in the matter and see that the much needed relief is afforded to the poor. As for minor irrigation works, I find that the work has been very slow. In many places, there has been no dissetting, and many tanks are still in a state of disrepair. Nothing has been done so far. The government must see that they take up this work and complete it at least before the end of next year so that the food production may be stepped up. There is then the electricity minimum charge. Even with regard to that, there has been so much of harassment. Something must be done to reduce the minimum charge so that the farmers may get some relief in the same way as those in the industrial sector. This is a very serious problem, and the government should influence the electricity board to see that the minimum charge is brought down considerably. Lastly, there is lot of delay in the disposal of cases by the officials of the various departments of government. Farmers and the poorest of the poor do not get orders early, with the result they are put to a lot of inconvenience. So the government must see that they tone up the administration and give a proper drive to the district officials to dispose their papers in time so that the poor people may get some relief. I am sure the government will do so and thus give relief to the poor. This is all my submission. With these words, I thank you for the opportunity given to me. To begin with, I confess to a sense of secret satisfaction that I have been given this opportunity of meeting friends of a profession to which I once belonged, but from which I severed connection more than 50 years ago now. It is really good in this way, by short contacts, to be reminded of what I was once engaged in and what I tried to do in my own humble way in that profession. I am one of those who do not believe that the work of lawyers is finished. You all know that our entire constitution is based largely on British model. Our administration of justice also is largely a copy of the system that prevails there. We know what importance the British Constitution has for the British people, and we also know how the judicial administration has stood the test of time and how it has proved that in spite of party wrangling on the political platform, how justice has always been able to keep itself above all parties, how judges have been able to dispense justice fairly and freely to all who have come to them, and now it has been the anxiety and the efforts of all our parties concerned to keep judiciary above any kind of suspicion. The mere fact that we have copied those institutions ought to be a guarantee that in this country also, at any rate at present, and so long as our constitution, the present constitution, lasts, there can be no fear of lawyers, of law courts, of judges losing any of the great importance which they enjoy. And as a matter of fact, we have even now many of our top people who are engaged in the administration of the country who were lawyers, and even if it be true that we are not ruled by lawyers now, there is no question that we are to be ruled according to law, and in order to be ruled according to law, there must be lawyers to point that out and lay down the law. One of the things which I have sometimes considered rather unfortunate is that while we have provided rather meticulously for the independence of our judiciary and have also provided in a way for the assistance to be given to judges by lawyers in administering the law, there is no provision anywhere that those who make the law know any law at all. It should be healthy step if we make efforts for the legislators that they also know law. This shall go a long way to make the law more appropriate to the people and serve the people in the most earnest way. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. I rise to inform the House of momentous developments that have taken place while we were in recess. On May 11, 1998, India successfully carried out three underground nuclear tests. Two more underground tests on May 13, 1998 completed the planned series of tests. I would like this House to join me in paying fulsome tribute to our scientists, engineers, and defense personnel whose singular achievements have given us a renewed sense of national pride and self confidence. In addition to the statement I now make, I have also taken the opportunity to submit to the House a paper entitled Evolution of India's Nuclear Policy. In 1947, when India emerged as a free country to take its rightful place in the Committee of Nations, the nuclear age has already dawned. Our leaders then took the crucial decision to opt for self reliance and freedom of thought and action. We rejected the Cold War paradigm and chose the more difficult path of non alignment. Our leaders also realized that a nuclear weapon free world would enhance not only India's security but also the security of all nations. That is why disarmament was and continues to be a major plank in our foreign policy. During the 50s, India took the lead in calling for an end to all nuclear weapon testing, addressing the Lok Sabha on April 2, 1957. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, to whose memory we pay homage, day stated nuclear, chemical, and biological energy and power should not be used to forge weapons of mass destruction. He called for negotiations for prohibition and elimination of nuclear weapons and in the interim a standstill agreement to halt nuclear testing. This call was not heeded. In 1965, along with a small group of non aligned countries, India put forward the idea of an international non proliferation agreement under which the nuclear weapon states would agree to give up their arsenals provided other countries refrained from developing or acquiring such weapons. This balance of rights and obligations was not accepted. In the 60s, our security concerns deepened. The country sought security guarantees, but the countries we turned to were unable to extend to us. As a result, we made it clear that we shall not sign that now. The Lok Sabha debated the issue. Prime Minister late Srimati Indira Gandhi assured the House that we shall be guided entirely by our self entitlement and the considerations of national security. This was a turning point, and this House strengthened the decision of the then government by reflecting a national consensus. Our decision not to sign the NPT was in keeping with our basic objectives. In 1974, we demonstrated our nuclear capability. Successive governments thereafter have taken all necessary steps in keeping with that resolve and national will to safeguard India's nuclear option. This was the primary reason behind the 1996 decision for not signing the CTBT, a decision that also enjoyed consensus of this House. The decades of 80s and 90s had meanwhile witnessed the gradual deterioration of our security environment as a result of nuclear and missile proliferation. In our neighborhood, nuclear weapons had increased and more sophisticated delivery systems inducted. In addition, India has also been the victim of externally aided and abetted terrorism, militancy, and clandestine war. At a global level, we see no evidence on the part of the nuclear weapon states to take decisive and irreversible steps in moving towards a nuclear weapon free world. Instead, we have seen that the NPT has been extended indefinitely and unconditionally, perpetuating the existence of nuclear weapons in the hands of the five countries. Under such circumstances, the government was faced with a difficult decision. The touchstone that has guided us in making the correct choice clear was national security. These tests are a continuation of the policies set into motion that put this country on the path of self reliance and independence of thought and action. India is now a nuclear weapon state. This is a reality that cannot be denied. It is not a conferment that we seek, nor is it a status for others to grant. It is an endowment to the nation by our scientists and engineers. It is India's due the right of one sixth of humankind. Our strengthened capability adds to our sense of responsibility. We do not intend to use these weapons for aggression or for mounting threats against any country. These are weapons of self defense to ensure that India is not subjected to nuclear threats or coercion. We do not intend to engage in an arms race. We had taken a number of initiatives in the past. We regret that these proposals did not receive a positive response from other nuclear weapon states. In fact, that had led to our current testing program as such. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. Since we met 14 months ago, I have had the opportunity of visiting most of the states and the union territories. Early last month, I made an extensive tour of the far flung northeastern region. During the tours, I met a large number of people from all walks of life and also came into close contact with several units of our valiant defense forces serving in inhospitable borders area and at great personal sacrifice and hardship. These extensive tours over the length and breadth of the country have convinced me that our constitutional structure and the pillars that support it are perfectly sound. We can hopefully look forward to a bright and prosperous future provided we are able to maintain the unity and solidarity of the nation. For the first time in our history, the federal structure envisaged in our constitution has really come into its own. Ever since independence, one dominant party had provided the stability needed for our political system, and this was so till very recently. That party has now lost its unique position, and a number of other parties with different ideologies and programs have come up and have been able to get varying degrees of support in different parts of the country. In some of the states, regional parties are in power. The overall political picture is thus extremely complex. It is a matter of satisfaction that the relations of all state governments with the central government are cordial and correct. This is essentially the democratic way of life, of mutual understanding and goodwill, of give and take, and of tolerance and capacity of work together in agreed programs for the national objectives. The role of the governor has to be correct in accordance with the Constitution. Under the Constitution, the states are in no way dependent on the Union for the exercise of their legislative and executive authority insofar as it concerns the sphere assigned to the states and does not impinge on the sphere of authority of the Union. The center and the states are joint partners in national development. In defining the role of the governors, the founding fathers of our Constitution clearly had foreseen the possibility of different parties being in power in the states and at the center. The Constituent Assembly did consider the question. There should be provision for an instrument of instructions to be issued to them. Sir, we have had the most stimulating and forthright debate in this House after I presented the Finance Bill. The honorable members have not only commented on the provisions of the bill, including the amendments that I have proposed and which have been accepted by the Lok Sabha, but they have also taken the opportunity of expressing their view on a wide ranging spectrum of matters concerning the national economy. I heartily welcome a discussion of this sort. It helps us to understand the mood and the feelings of the House and also gives me an opportunity to respond and to react to those views. Sir, I must first of all with one point of criticism which was made by my honorable friends. They say that I have been pressurized and influenced by all sorts of lobbies outside the House, and I have adjusted and modified the finance bill as a result of that. Sir, I have great respect for this House and for Parliament, and indeed it is my duty to take into consideration whatever is said here. However, I do not think that it needs a very deep knowledge of democratic practice to understand that we are not the only persons who can give expression to the views of the people, the citizens, and the taxpayers. This might have been the philosophy of the previous government, which without hesitation suppressed popular expression and became a law unto itself. The present government's approach is different. It is here that the people have expressed their confidence in the present government, and we therefore consider it to be our first duty to listen to their grievances and their points of view, to try to understand their representations and give due attention to the problems which are brought to our notice by them, the members of the public. It was against this background that I had listened with great care and attention not only to the suggestions made in both the houses but also to the representations made by a very large number of citizens, associations, and responsible individuals, and I am not apologetic about what I have done. As stated by me in the Lok Sabha, I would like to say that it is the intention of this government to be fully responsive to public feeling. Sir, my government has launched an emotional attitude against the action of the present government. Sir, I have no intention of taking the lack of time in other things. Any person who has been associated with the administration of this country as my friend has himself been will certainly understand the complexities of our national problems. Stop.